Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Sanders, and this is Watch Art Side, the art and science of watch collection. Today is a day that I'm going to try something a little different than I usually do. Normally on Sunday, we have our collection review, and we've had a total, I think, of 41. After looking at a lot of these different collections that people had, and including my own, there are so many different ways people collect watches. I thought I might give some collection observations, reflections, if you will. One of the things that I suppose that as watch collectors, oftentimes we start with the brand. Someone will say, "Well, this is a good brand. This is a Patek Philippe. You can't go wrong with that, or Rolex, or any number of other ones." I started with a Patek Philippe because I didn't know what was what, and I found one I liked, and I still like it. On the other hand, I still haven't gotten a Rolex because every time I save up to get a Rolex, something else comes along that I want to get. So a lot of the collection, I think, is sort of different kinds of things that drive us. Suddenly we have a lot of money, and so our collection may take one direction, or suddenly we won't have so much, and it'll take another, or maybe we never did have very much, and so we're going along a certain path. We're also, I think, people are really influenced a lot by their friends and the different kinds of watches they get. Reflect what their friends think are neat. For example, sports watches are probably the most popular watch out there. You see more types, more models of it. And with sports watches, I include everything from divers to Speedmaster, Omega Speedmasters, to aviation watches, all kinds of different watches that sort of come under the sports watch. And these are usually opposed to, or contrasted with, I think is a better term, with what's called a dress watch. And the dress watches, ones that are usually made of precious metal, and maybe they might even have some jewels in them. And if it's a lady's watch, most very likely they have it. Now, another watch, I think it's been ignored in terms of collections because I think people get one and they use it a lot, is what I call an office watch. And an office watch is one you wear to work every day. It looks nice. Maybe you have to wear a coat and tie, or a woman's suit for work. And you don't want to wear your sports watch because it looks like a sports watch. And on the other hand, you don't want to get all dressed up and what appears to be, it is not only appears to be, it definitely is, um, something fancy. Okay, so you have an office watch. So if we divide it into those three general categories, then within that you have travel watches, either with GMT or travel time, and all different kinds of combinations. But I think, at least to me, I probably have gone a little heavy on the what you might call the dress watch size, and really the only sports watch to speak of I have. Well, maybe I have two. I have this Beauvais Monorato Ponte, and some might consider that a sports watch because it has a chronograph in it. And then I have Vacheron Constantin overseas, which was there overseas. Not much of a sports watch. On the other hand, no, most people with divers aren't divers. So we have sort of this idea of it, of these different kinds of watches. But, so, one of the things you say is that the contingencies and what we get are as important as our plans, I think. It's an old saying, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. So, it's certainly true with watch collection. Um, I think probably the three main drivers, if you want, in watch collections are brand and brand recognition. Two, the dial. In other words, do you like the looks of it? And three, and to me the most important, is the movement. Realistically, most people don't pay much attention to the movement when they buy a watch. Collectors, perhaps more so. The main thing that a lot of people pay attention to, I think, is the brand. And they hear that one brand or another is the very best, and they go along with that brand, or they have a certain number of brands they like. For example, the Holy Trinity, made up of Audemars Piguet, Vacheron Constantin, and Patek Philippe. People say, well, I'm just going to buy brands there. Or in sports watches, maybe they center on an Omega Speedmaster, or they like Rolex subs, or any number of different kinds of watches like that. Now, to me, going by a brand is only important insofar as that brand delivers something really worth getting. And one of the things I've harped on, perhaps too much for some, is the use of cheap movements in expensive watches. And so the you see a watch you like, and so they want a lot of money for it. It's got a name brand, and then you find out later that they put a Salida in the thing. It's sort of like, what did I pay all that money for? Because you can buy the same watch, I mean, or at least with the same movement, for a fraction of the price. And so I think this comes to a point, I think I probably made it again and again for collectors. And this has to do with the economics of it too. People think, well, what's the trade-in price? Well, or how much does it retain its value? Okay, I suppose if you're going to swap watches back and forth, that becomes somewhat important. But if you just want to collect a really good collection of watches, I think the most important thing is knowledge. To really research a watch, to find out as much about it as possible. Uh, I I do my best to impart knowledge that I picked up about watches, but I could be full of beans on something, and somebody else writes about a watch, and I found out, well, that particular publication gets they take money to write good reviews, so you can't trust those. And I think that more than anything else, as collectors, we need good information. We really do, and holding the manufacturer's feet to the fire. To be honest about it, there's one watch company that uses nothing but standard movements. I'll put it that way, and that's Steinhardt. I like Steinhardt not because they make the greatest watches in the world, but they don't. But they're honest about it. Other companies like FP Journe that are extremely expensive, they're honest about it too, because in fact they brag about it, and for good reason, because they make excellent movements. Beauvais is another company, same thing. And I think that there should be some kind of reward for watch companies that tell us the truth. And usually the truth is, or fibs, you might say, is by omission. Um, I have watches in my collection, and I've seen them. If you go to watchbase.com, you'll see something that'll have the designation for one company, whether it's Omega or Mont Blanc, or doesn't matter, any one of these. And then you find out that it's running on an ETA or a Salida, and you say, well, that's, to me, that's deception. Every watch should have some kind of information that tells you exactly what you're going to get. Companies like Rolex, Patek Philippe, these companies, they have all of their stuff is in-house. Yes, it's true that at one time Rolex had a Zenith El Primero in it, but is that's a good movement. The same thing with Vacheron Constantin and a lot of other uh, big companies, and not big companies, but Holy Trinity companies. They've used movements from other companies as well, but they're usually better companies. For example, Jaeger-LeCoultre has supplied a lot of high horology movements to companies that usually have their own. The same thing is true with Girard-Perregaux. My Harry Winston here has a Girard-Perregaux in it, but Harry Winston doesn't make any of its own movements and doesn't have any bones about it because the ones they use are so good. In fact, they were recently sold to Swatch, and so from what I understand, they're going to be having Blancpain movements from now on, and these are, of course, Blancpain is owned by Swatch as well. This kind of information becomes important because people selling watches, all they want to do is sell them. Okay, I'm not saying that they're dishonest. I think that if if you with the prices that we pay for watches, we need good information. And our collections, the extent to which we have knowledge, our collection reflects that knowledge. And so, and again, I'm not talking about listen to me and nobody else. I would listen to as many people as I could, which ones are reliable and which ones aren't, and same thing with publications, to try to find out as much as possible. And I suppose if somebody is what I'll call I don't want to call them a brand Nazi or a brand junkie, but somebody who's so hung up on a brand that they don't look around. I keep thinking of this one guy who had an Omega only collection, but his was so incredible. He knew so much about Omegas that it was like, well, okay, that sort of makes sense. The same is true, I suppose, with other ones. But what I try to do is to try to find out the very best and forget the commercials. They have a new one out, I forgot, with on Tudor with Beckman, the soccer player. And if you buy a two-door, you're not going to be like him any more than you're going to be James Bond if you buy one of the Omegas that he used in his movies. So anyway, my reflections on collections is information. Get the best information you can, and don't look at just one source. I mean, I've looked at a lot of different reviews before I'll go into something, and I'll go to some place like Watchbase or some other place that has not a lot of opinion but a lot of data. Try to find a data-rich place to find out about watches. Okay, well, this is like I said, this is a different kind of collection review. It's more about reflections on collections. And again, I know as well as anybody else that what we get is contingent on how much money we have, some kind of opportunity will come along, and you'll end up with a watch that you never thought you'd had. One of the watches I bought, I put in a bid I thought was so low. I didn't know that. I hadn't done my research on the watch. I liked it, though. I liked what the guy selling it had to say about it. And so I put in a low bid. I just did it. And I won. So suddenly I had this watch I didn't expect I'd have and had to pony up the money for it. I will never do that again. And any watch you buy, I don't care. Somebody says, oh, get a bid in, or you got to get this thing now. But that can happen. But the more information, the more knowledge you have, you'll know whether that's a good idea or not. And one of the things I would say above all is to know what the actual movement is. You have a beautiful watch, but you want a good movement in it. There's a whole other set of, I guess, criteria too for fake watches, and I don't want to even touch that. That's important, and there's certain brands that have a lot of fake watches and a lot of places that aren't too careful about selling fake watches. So that's a whole other thing too that you have to avoid. But just in terms of buying real watches, genuine watches of any brand, it's knowledge is the most important thing. And I think that the more of that you have, two things. One, the more fun a watch collection is, and second of all, the less likely you are to get burned. One last thing. I keep seeing these fights. My brand's better than your brand. Um, we don't need to do that. I tell you, the thing is that if somebody loves their brand and he thinks it's better than your brand, just ask them, find out everything you can about their brand, not just hot air or not their slogans, but rather just find out about it. Maybe it is. Maybe they got a good point. But and equally important, find out about your own brand, the one you happen to be using at a time or that you like a lot. Okay, well, let's hear your comments on this. Like I said, this is very different than what I usually do on Sunday. But I felt, well, what the heck, we've had over 40 collection reviews in addition to two of my own collections. So let's hear what your opinions are about sort of the plan of collections and the the quote that sometimes the contingencies are not as important. Sometimes they're more important than the plans themselves. Okay, this has been Bill Sanders for Watch Art Sci. Here's the invitation to subscribe. Also, too, enter our Watch Collectors Grand Prix that we talked about on Friday. Hope to see you next Friday.